Before I get into this video, I just wanted to point this out really quickly, but this is a children's playground. First of all, it's gated. It's very interesting. I never saw that in Europe. But aside from that, they are conditioning these kids very early on to drive instead of cycle. And I think that is for good reason. It's because here in the US, cycling, well, it kind of just sucks. But I think I can show you better than I can tell you. As a matter of fact, why not do both simultaneously? So you can see it's a relatively cloudy day. A lot of days in the Netherlands look like this as well. So I kind of feel like I'm in my element, biking in this cloudy weather. And I'll show you the bike that I'm riding at the end, but we're just gonna go ahead and get into it. So right now I'm cycling. We're gonna go around this speed bump right here. This is an elementary school. Actually, it's the exact elementary school that I went to from ages, what, 7 through 11, I think? 2nd grade through 5th grade. So most of my elementary school experience was carried out at this school. By the way, I hope you can hear me. It is pretty windy today, which also reminds me quite a bit of the Netherlands. But that wind noise can be very, very disruptive. So I hope you can hear me. But I want to go ahead and show you something really quickly. I'm going to make a quick little detour before I show you what it's actually like biking in the US and tell you what's wrong with biking in the US. For starters, again, this is an elementary school. So literally none of the students are driving themselves to school, hopefully, because the students are, well, children. They're ages 6 through 11. But you can see the bike parking here is not very extensive by any means. Not much bike parking. And I remember as a kid, I used to ride my bike to this school and I would park my bike on those racks, but they haven't added any new racks since then. Don't know why that's the case, but we're gonna go ahead and come out into this neighborhood. I don't really have a specific route. I just want to take an organic bike ride just to show you the raw reality, because I could sit here and cherry pick specific bike paths, but obviously that wouldn't be very authentic. So in the Netherlands, I always just took very, very random, unplanned routes whenever I filmed videos like this. So we have to keep things consistent. So right now I'm biking in a neighborhood. This is the only time you will ever see me cycling in the street like this, is when I'm in a neighborhood with a low speed limit. You will never see me biking in the street on a busier street because, well, I value my life. Now, it's pretty interesting because when I was reading through some of the comments on my last cycling video here in the US, I noticed that there were a few people, they were the overwhelming minority, but there were a few people who essentially said that I was just complaining for no reason and that I should just bike in the street like they do. I should, what did they say? Own the lane, I think it was. Look, those people clearly don't live in Dallas. They do not live in the DFW area, because these people out here will really hit you and just keep going. And that'll just be it. I mean, even if they stop, even if they get in trouble for it or whatever, you're still dead. It doesn't matter what happens after that, because for you, the consequence is still the same, regardless of what the consequences are for them. But we're just riding through a neighborhood right now. Wouldn't really expect there to be bike lanes in a neighborhood like this, because, well, it's a neighborhood, not really necessary. And again, this is the kind of place where I do feel safe riding in the street. But when I get out into the main streets, you will quickly see why cycling on those streets is simply not a good idea. And actually, I thought about potentially filming a video in which I try to do that, just to showcase why it's not a good idea. And then again, I remembered I like living, and I don't care how many views a video might get, it is not worth risking my life over. So again, I don't really agree with those people who said that you should just own the lane, because quite frankly, if you're on a bike, you have very little leverage. Your leverage is exceedingly limited, meaning that if you and a car get into a quote-unquote battle over the lane usage, the car is going to win 12 times out of 10. But we're gonna go ahead and abide by this stop sign, and we're gonna keep riding. So again, I'm just going through the neighborhood right now, but I want to take you to a main street, and I think there's actually a car behind me, so I'm gonna go ahead and let this car pass. Let them pass me up. I guess there was probably enough room for both of us. I forget that these American streets are a lot wider, even in the neighborhoods. But just gonna keep riding. Now, the thing with people like that, I understand where they're coming from. You should always try to make the most of what you have. You should try to make the best of your current situation. And those people have seemingly just accepted the idea that this is just how America is. And instead of trying to change it, we should just accept it and do the best that we can with what we have. I understand that philosophy fundamentally because I'm an entrepreneur. And as an entrepreneur, that is literally the name of the game. It's not about having the best tools. It's about being the best with the tools that you have. Now, that said, actually, you know what? Let's go this way to minimize wind noise. And I think that's the dead end. So we're gonna go back this way. I think I know where I might want to take you. But that said, while I do acknowledge the validity of that philosophy in life, and I appreciate that, I also understand that complacency is not a very good agent for transformation. And I know this because as someone who made self-improvement videos for multiple years, that was pretty much the essence of my message. If you become complacent with who you are and what your current situation is, you'll never have any incentive to go about changing it for the better. And what I've realized is that Dutch people in particular, and I'm speaking about the Netherlands because that's the place with which I have the most direct experience in Europe, and it's also the place that is arguably the best for cyclists in the whole entire world. But and this neighborhood just kind of goes on forever, but I'm going on a tangent there. Dutch people are known to be chronic complainers. Dutch people love to complain. It's a very big stereotype, and it's true. Dutch people do love to complain, but because they love to complain, guess what happens? Things improve. A lot of people don't know this. I talk a lot about how Dutch cycling infrastructure is completely superior to American cycling infrastructure in every conceivable way, but that wasn't always the case. There was actually a point in time, and if you're Dutch, please provide more details in the comments because I'm sure you know a lot more about this than I do. But there was a point in time when basically the Netherlands was trending toward car dependency. It was moving in the direction that the US is currently going in, or I wouldn't even say currently going in. It was moving in the direction that the US is currently at. It was moving in the direction of the destination that the US has already arrived at. But guess what happened? A few children got killed, maybe more than a few, I don't really know all of the specifics, but children were killed in vehicular accidents, and people began to protest. They said, stop the child murder. And guess what? Guess what happened? The urban planners listened, and they started to structure their cities a lot differently because of that. And now, if you go to the Netherlands, even if you're in a small town of 12,000 people, I know this because I literally did this myself. I saw this for myself. You can still cycle pretty much anywhere you need to go. And if it's too far, you can at least cycle to a bus stop where a bus will come pick you up and take you to that place. So again, complaining, pessimism, or better yet, skepticism is what creates change. It creates rapid transformation. And that is why I am on 10. I have been on 10 since I got back, just really talking shit about the US. It's not because I hate America. I actually love America and I want to see it do well. And just like when you have a friend or a family member that you want to see do well, you don't go about rewarding them for doing dumb shit. At least if you're a good friend. I hope you can hear me, by the way. Aside from the wind noise, this car noise is really, really loud. That's in part because of the material of the roads. Here in Dallas, concrete is still the most common substance used for the roads, but also because the cars just drive a lot faster. I don't know if you can really tell how fast the cars are driving. I'm going at a very casual pace on this bike, but these cars are going probably 3 times my speed. And so again, when you talk about owning the lane, I mean, I appreciate the idea behind it, but we might need to go and revisit high school physics, because I was taught that if you're on a bike and you run into a truck or a car, even a small car, which is going a lot faster than you, you are going to receive the short end of the stick every single time. But you see, we're on the sidewalk and we have a couple of pedestrians. Let me show you how we navigate these kinds of situations. Watch what's about to happen. They're just gonna step out of the way. Boom. They stepped out of the way, and we'll go ahead and take a left right here, stay on the sidewalk. That's all it takes. You see, some people also said that it was unsafe for us to be cycling on the sidewalk. And here's my thing with that. Okay, for starters, again, pedestrians can always just go onto the grass, or even me as a cyclist. I can just go onto the grass. This isn't a mountain bike, but I can definitely just do that. It's not gonna ruin the bike or anything. But also, if you think about the ramifications of a pedestrian being hit by a cyclist, let's say for whatever reason I wasn't paying attention and I just ran into one of those women right there on this bike, they would be okay. They would be all right. Maybe a few scratches, a few bruises or cuts, scrapes, but they would mostly be dealing with pretty superficial injuries. Whereas if I get hit by a car, I'm dealing with, well, I'm not dealing with it, my family's dealing with it, funeral expenses. So it's a whole different ballgame. Now, you can see right here that this is pretty much the closest that we have to a bike lane. And I'm actually very, very appreciative of the fact that they added this in, because we did not have this when I was a child growing up. But this is definitely very useful. But something that I didn't notice about this until Not Just Bikes pointed it out. He actually commented on this aforementioned video. But something that I hadn't noticed was that these paths tend to wind. So you can see it's not just going in a straight line, it's going in this twisty, curvy sort of way. And this is good for maybe leisure riding or leisure walking. But when you're trying to get to a destination, it does add up. It does add up over time. We're gonna go ahead and let these cars pass. And I apologize if I'm sniffling a lot as well. It's allergy season. But let's go ahead and cross this street right here. So the bike lane kind of ends and it leads into, you guessed it, a sidewalk. So again, I personally was always taught to ride the bike on the sidewalk. That's just what I was taught growing up. I mean, would you really want your child, would you even as an adult feel comfortable cycling on a street like this? I mean, realistically, would you feel comfortable with that? Because personally, that is not something that I feel comfortable with at all. And furthermore, here in the US, at least in Dallas, or this part of Dallas, it is fully legal to cycle on the sidewalk. So I'm going to continue cycling on the sidewalk for as long as I'm here. But again, nothing changes if nothing changes. People have to decide that they want change. They have to decide that it is a priority for them. And so a lot of Americans, they simply enable this cycling infrastructure to remain intact, or rather the lack thereof to remain intact, because I hope you can hear me, these cars are really loud. But for starters, they don't know any better, and also they've adapted to car dependency. They have adapted, and there are a lot of enablers here, a lot of enablers who really don't even have a reference point for how much better life can be when you can get around by bike or by bus or by train. Because even if you like driving, I've said this a few times before, but I'm going to keep saying it just in case someone new is watching. Even if you prefer to drive, then you still receive the benefits of cycling infrastructure, because now a lot of these people who are driving, who would rather not be driving, well, they're not on the roads anymore. They're cycling. They're taking these alternate forms of transportation. And you can see that sidewalk just kind of ended right there. So if you wanted to continue going, you would pretty much have to cross the street. I think we're gonna go ahead and do that actually. But those people would not be in their cars clogging up the roads, so there'd be less traffic for you. And on top of that, they'd be putting less wear and tear on the roads, so the roads will look nicer. So literally, everyone benefits from having alternate forms of transportation. Now, I'm gonna go ahead and cross this street right here. We got the walk sign, but in this case, the walk sign doubles as a bike sign. We're gonna go this way, actually. I think there might be kind of a trail back here. And let's see what happens with this. This car is about to turn out here. Yeah, so he's not even looking. He's not even looking for cyclists or pedestrians. He didn't even look in my direction. But we have a pedestrian right here. This sidewalk is plenty wide enough for both of us. So I'm gonna pass him up and we're gonna go here. So this path right here, honestly, I don't even know where this leads. I don't think I've ever cycled here before, but it kind of seems like it just leads nowhere based on what I can see. And again, it's a very twisty, curvy path for pretty much no reason. Pretty much no reason. There's not really much scenery over here. It is kind of peaceful, not a lot of people, not a lot of cars in particular, so it's a lot quieter. But other than that, you can just see the back of stores right there and a bunch of power lines. Looks like we have a kid up here, maybe on a skateboard or a scooter or something like that. So it's nice that he can safely ride on this path right here without having to worry about getting hit. And this seems to kind of cut through this neighborhood right here. But you're taking some of the scenery, if you can even call it that. can see we as cyclists are being made to yield on this street right here. And we're gonna go ahead and turn right here. I think I might just continue to follow this bike path and just kind of see how far it goes. It's interesting though, for as nice as this bike path actually is, even though it doesn't really seem to lead anywhere, for as nice as it is, you don't see anybody actually using it. Go ahead and ride on the street for a second so I don't run into this girl. And I think the reason why you don't really see people using it is not so much because it doesn't lead anywhere. That might play a role, but I don't think that's the main reason. I think the real reason why is because of people's perception of cycling here. You see, here in the US, and this is a point I've touched on in the past, but I'll continue to touch on it because it's so very important that we understand this. Even if we had cycling infrastructure in Dallas, even if they just suddenly added in bike lanes, added in a bus route, etc., I reckon that most people still would not make use of that infrastructure here in Dallas specifically, simply because of the sort of low status association with alternate forms of transportation. Here, if you ride your bike to the grocery store, or let's say wherever else, if you're riding your bike to work, so on and so forth, people do look at you differently, and it's very unfortunate, but they do look at you differently. And it seems like now the bike path is giving way to a sidewalk. You can see you have a gated house right there. Pretty interesting. But people here have this strange need for social validation, and they are willing to pay a premium to receive it. And by premium, I'm talking about 5-figure down payments for expensive trucks like that. All right, most of these people who have these trucks, they don't actually need them. You don't actually need a truck if you're just gonna be driving on paved roads. They're just buying it for the status. Let's be real. It's the cool thing to do in Texas. And this is actually more of a Texas specific thing than a US thing as a whole. Because when I was in California, I didn't see as many trucks, but definitely in Texas, people value their trucks, they value their cars, and they don't want to be seen as that person who is riding the bus to work. And it's a shame. And I don't know how you change that. I don't know how you go about making it cool. I really don't. And Texans are notoriously stubborn when it comes to change in general. Changes in gun control, changes in transportation infrastructure, just change overall. And it's really, really sad. I think a lot of these people could benefit from spending just a few months overseas and seeing how they feel, seeing if they feel less stressed, less tension. But I don't know, maybe I'm just talking. But the cycling infrastructure is not the worst that it could be. There are some places that don't even have, and I just got wet from that sprinkler. There are some places that don't even have sidewalks like this. And to those people, my heart goes out to you, because you're basically cooked. There's not really much you can do in that particular situation. But you can see even the roads here. A lot of the roads in Texas just look like this. Really, really bumpy. A lot of cracks in the road. Not very pleasant to drive on or bike on. But again, we have a lot to work on. But I think the work is actually more internal than external. I think that until Americans can learn to curb this need for social validation, or at the very least, shift the reference point of what garners social validation, I don't really see a scenario anytime within my lifetime, and I plan on living a long life, I don't really see a scenario in which the US and Texas in particular will have functional bike infrastructure. Now, on that topic, speaking of bikes, let me go ahead and show you the bike that I used for this ride. So the kickstand is a little bit shaky, so let me just go ahead and hold it up. But just a basic Schwinn bike. I added this on after the fact, added on some lights. Those come in handy, but now I think it's time to go back to the house and just reflect on how much I wish we could overcome this issue.